Imagine this for a second. Just getting some new clothes made could land you in serious ethical hot water. Not just you, but like your whole community's reputation.
Sounds pretty dramatic for ancient times, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it absolutely was a thing. Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're doing a deep dive into a specific ancient monastic rule. It's all about robes. And even the thread used to make them. They come straight from the Buddhist monastic code, the Vinaya. Our mission here is to sort of pull apart the practical side, the ethics behind it, and honestly, some surprising details hidden in there. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding this really interesting piece of history.
And we're setting the scene quite specifically. We're talking about Rajagaha at a place called Vehuvain Kalandakanivape during the Buddha's lifetime. So this isn't just some, dry rule. It's really a window into daily life back then, the economics, the social stuff. And what's fascinating is just how meticulous these guidelines got, even about things that seem pretty mundane, like thread. Right. So who actually caused this rule to be made? The sources point to this group, the Chabbaggiya bhikkhus. They were monks who, let's just say, had a reputation for maybe going a bit too far sometimes.
That's a polite way to put it.
Yeah. So the texts say they were soliciting quite a lot of thread from lay people. But here's the kicker. Even after their robes were made, they often had like loads of thread left over.
And they didn't stop there, according to the account. They kept asking for more thread and kept having weavers make more robes, even with the surplus just sitting there, which naturally leads you to wonder, well, what kind of pressure did that put on the lay community? I mean, these people were giving donations out of faith.
That's a really important point. You can almost feel the awkwardness, can't you? And the community definitely noticed. Lay people apparently started complaining. They were wondering, why are these sikkhāpada saman, which means monks of the Sakya clan, the Buddha's own clan, why are they acting like this? It clearly wasn't going down well.
And it wasn't just chatter outside the monastery walls. Inside, you had the bhikkhus. These were the monks who desired little, the more restrained ones. They heard the complaints too, and they saw the potential damage to the Sangha's reputation. So they actually reported the Chabbaggiya group to the Buddha himself.
Ah, okay, so it escalated internally.
Exactly. It shows how crucial public perception and trust were. And the Buddha, well, he directly questioned the monks involved.
And his reaction, was it mild?
Oh, not at all. He rebuked them strongly. He pointed out that their actions were harmful to pācittiya, inspiring faith of those who didn't have it yet.
Right.
And also harmful to pācittiya, which is about increasing the faith of those who already believed.
So basically undermining the whole relationship with the community.
Precisely. He saw it as actively damaging the respect and confidence that the lay people had placed in the monastic order.
And that leads directly to the rule itself.
That's right. This incident prompted the formal establishment of the sikkhāpada, the training rule. It goes, Yopana bhikkhus samasutta vinyapetva tantabayehi chuvara vayapeya Nissaggiya pācittiyanti.
Okay, whoa. Let's break that down a bit. What does that actually mean in practice? Samasutta vinyapetva. That's the soliciting part.
Exactly. Soliciting thread themselves, the monk doing the asking personally, and tantabayehi refers to the weavers. The source also calls them pācittiya.
Got it. And was it about any kind of thread?
Well, this is where the detail gets quite impressive. The rule explicitly lists types. Koma, which is linen, kapācittiya, cotton, kāzhiya,
Silk? Silk.
silk. Also, kambalai, wool, size, hemp, and phunkai, which is another plant fiber, likely similar to hemp or jute.
That's incredibly specific. Linen, cotton, silk, wool, hemp.
It is. And that list itself tells you something, doesn't it? It reflects the variety of materials available, perhaps the different economic levels of the donors, all brought under this one ethical guideline.
Okay, and the consequence. Nissaggiya, pācittiya. What does that involve? Is it just a telling off?
No, it's more serious than that. It's an offense that requires two things. One, forfeiture of the item. The robe itself has to be given up. And two, a formal confession of the offense. So it's quite a significant procedure.
So it sounds like there's a point where the offense becomes fully realized. Is there a difference between, say, asking for the thread versus actually getting the robe?
Yes, there is a distinction. The texts clarify this. There's a minor offense called payoja dukai, which occurs during the process of having the robe woven, while the weavers are working on it based on your solicited thread.
Okay, like an in-progress offense.
Sort of. But the full major offense, the Nissaggiya one with forfeiture and confession,
Yeah.
that's only incurred when you actually receive the finished robe.
That's interesting. And they even get into the monk's state of mind, their perception. How does that play into it? Is it about whether they intended to break the rule?
It's fascinating, actually. The rule seems to prioritize the objective act and its impact on the community over the monk's subjective feeling or even precise intention at that moment. For example, if the robe is woven from solicited thread and the monk perceives it as woven, it's Nissaggiya pācittiya. That makes sense.
Right.
But even if it is woven, but the monk is doubtful about it, it's still Nissaggiya pācittiya.
Okay.
And here's the strictest part. If it is woven from solicited thread, but the monk somehow perceives it as not woven, maybe they're mistaken or confused, it's still Nissaggiya pācittiya.
Wow. So ignorance isn't really an excuse here. The fact is the fact.
Exactly. It sets a very clear, objective standard. It seems designed to uphold the Sangha's integrity and perhaps avoid arguments about intention. Now, there is a minor offense of the kukaya if the robe is not actually woven yet, but the monk mistakenly thinks it is, or is doubtful.
But no major offense, then?
No major offense. And of course, if it's not woven and they correctly perceive it as not woven, then there's no offense at all related to receiving it.
And for that major offense, the Nissaggiya one, you mentioned forfeiture. Is there a specific way they have to do that?
Yes, the process is quite formal. The monk has to approach the Sangha, or a group of monks, or even an individual monk, and make a declaration. Something like, "Venerable Sir, this robe of mine was made by having thread solicited by myself and then woven by weavers. This constitutes an offense requiring forfeiture. I hereby forfeit this robe to the Sangha."
That's quite a public admission. It really underlines the seriousness and the structured discipline.
It does. But importantly, the rule isn't completely rigid. It also outlines specific situations where doing exactly this soliciting thread and having robes woven is actually okay. These are the exceptions, the anapati.
Ah, okay. So it's not a total ban. That makes sense. What sort of exceptions were allowed? Were they practical things?
Very much so. This is where you see the rule balancing strictness with the actual needs of monastic life. It shows a lot of common sense, really.
Like what, for instance?
Well, for example, it's not an offense if the thread or the resulting fabric is needed for essential tasks, like sewing or mending robes, either for oneself or for the community supply. That's kavara sibitu yoje.
Okay, basic maintenance. Makes sense.
Right. Or for making other necessary monastic items. The text lists things like a kayabantana, which is a body band or belt, and a sabantaka, a shoulder strap or band, a patatavika, which is a bag for the alms bowl, or even a parasavana, a water strainer.
So functional gear for their daily practice.
Exactly. Things they genuinely needed. It's also okay if it's done for relatives yatakana, or for people who have specifically invited the monk for this purpose, pavardatana.
Like a specific donation request fulfilled.
Precisely. Or if it's generally done for someone else's benefit, anyasis ataya. And very practically, there's no offense if a monk uses their own funds or resources to get the thread, atano danana.
Right, because then they aren't soliciting donations for it.
Correct. And finally, there are a couple of other exceptions. One is for someone deemed insane umadakasa, a compassionate exception. And interestingly, for the Adhikamika, that's the very first offender, the one whose actions actually led to the rule being created in the first place.
Ah, so the original Chabbaggiya monks involved in that specific incident wouldn't be retrospectively punished under the rule they caused.
It seems that way, yes. A sort of patient zero exemption for the establishment of the rule.
So when you step back this deep dive into what initially sounds like a really narrow, almost fussy rule about thread,
Yeah.
it actually tells us so much more. It's like a shortcut, really, to understanding the complex ethics, the intense focus on community perception, and the kind of careful resource management that was part of ancient monastic life.
Absolutely. And if you think about the bigger picture, it just hammers home that timeless principle, doesn't it? The importance of transparency, of avoiding even the appearance of doing something wrong, especially if you're in a position of, spiritual or moral leadership. It's fundamental for maintaining trust. And that applies just as much today, I think, whether you're talking about a monastery or really any organization that relies on public goodwill and integrity.
That's a really powerful connection to draw. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does this ancient example regulating something as basic as how you get your clothes made, What does it tell you about the ongoing struggle, maybe, to keep ethical standards high and maintain public trust? Whether it's 2,500 years ago or right now, definitely something to think about until our next deep dive.